You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Ayo Gbeleyi. Today we look at Lagos State. How does it finance its operations? How sustainable are its financing? How exposed is it in various borrowing schemes, including bond issuance program? I have, probably the second most authoritative person to speak on this issue after only the state governor as my guest today. Enjoy the program. Welcome back. It's still the Policy Council, and my guest is the Honorable Commissioner for Finance in Lagos State. He is a chartered accountant. He was my colleague in banking. He did infrastructure and project finance in the telecom sector, and on the government side as Director General and Special Advisor to the Governor of Lagos State on public-private partnerships. Ayo Gbeleyi, you're welcome to the Policy Council.
Thank you very much, Okoyemi. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks a lot. Well, in Lagos State, it's not unusual. You have many private sector people in the Lagos State government. But how would you compare your experience in the private sector, in all those banks where I know you work, with working on the government side?
The motivation is quite clear. You know, it's all about service. It's all about expanding the cause of humanity. It's all about all those experiences we have garnered as professionals in the private sector and bringing that to bear on public sector as well. We are all thinking of Nigeria, where we can call the Nigeria of our dream, where we can actualize our full potentials. As you very well know, in the first world, you know, think of North America. You find Timothy Geithner, for example, immediate past Treasury Secretary in the U.S., who was previously, you know, on Wall Street, and then he came into public sector, and now he's back. So, I mean, we should get to that point where it's so fluid that, you know, private sector experts can always move easily into the public sector. For me, it's been quite exciting because there is so much to learn. There is so much to impact on our lives and the, you know, socio-economic well-being of the people at large.
Your first portfolio in government was PPPs.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's a bit similar, but to perhaps what you are doing as a senior finance person in Airtel, financing infrastructure and all of that. But you are wearing the other cap now, the government cap. What were the most important challenges you faced as DG PPP?
The public-private partnerships arrangements are, you know, quite a virgin terrain in our environment. The key challenges we face is typical, you know, like you see in most project finance. You need an infrastructure, a market infrastructure that can support PPP transactions. For example, if you look at the Blue Line rail concession that we are currently negotiating, we had to pull in advisors from the City of London on the legal side, from South Africa, as well as UK on the financial side, and then also on the technical side, we had to pull in advisors from Canada. Now, the simple truth is nobody has negotiated a rail concession of the size and scale that we are handling here. You know, so you need to bring in expertise. So the expertise is still building up. And what we also do is to engender skills transfer in all of our transactions. So as we bring in one foreign advisor that is a local, that is also shadowing that foreign advisor, so that we can transfer that skill set and orderly develop this the market for PPP here. Of course, as a banker, you know also that in terms of long-term financing, that has presented significant challenge to infrastructure rollout in our climate, and we need to build strongly on that. We are beginning to see more support from the banks. They are getting more engaged, you know, on transactions on a longer-term basis. In my days in telecoms, it was a struggle to extend loan tenure beyond 18 months, and we did back then in V-Mobile, one of the first 5-year tenure transaction in this market. Today, you can find 12-year tenure transaction, and we are beginning to test even 15-year tenure transaction. So it's all good. It's all good development, and we are seeing a rapid development of the PPP market.
Let me ask you about one popular PPP transaction you will be familiar with, the Lagos Ekpe Expressway, which your government recently decided to buy out What was the rationale for the buyout?
Well, that's a very fantastic project, I would describe it, in the sense that it is the first direct user-based, full private sector finance electronic toll road in West Africa. So it's first of its kind and it's groundbreaking. Now, what led us to rethink our strategy around the project? Well, when we entered into that transaction in April 2006, as you very well know, exchange rate was under 118 naira, to the dollar. If you look at cost of borrowing then, it was largely subdued. At the time we took this decision, late last year, exchange rate was already testing 170. Interest rate was already overboard at over 20%. So in terms of the financial fundamentals and the project fundamentals, they've changed quite rapidly, between 2006 and 2003 when this decision was taken. And it was taken in overall public interest. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. For example, the contractual agreement provides that the concessionaire is able to adjust toll in line with inflation every quarter. Now, if government had allowed that to happen, probably car that is currently priced at 120 naira will be priced at 144 naira because they wanted to increase by 20%, and the SUV would have been a figure close to 190 naira. So as a responsible government, and having consulted with all stakeholders across board, including civil society, we came to a conclusion that it was imperative in overriding public interest to consider 100% acquisition of the shareholding interest in the special purpose vehicle called Lekki Concession Company. Of course, as it were, the concession agreement has not been terminated in any way because the concession company, LCC, will still continue the operation, albeit now as a fully commercialized government entity. Why we then consider...
So the benefit to the public is that you can now control the fares.
Yeah, we can control the toll, and then there are other issues of compensation. When we built the Lekki-Ikoyi Bridge, it fell within the 10-kilometer radius for non-compete transport infrastructure for that road project. It would have meant that we were going to pay over the remaining life of the concession till 2038, for example, about over 66 billion in compensation, for traffic diversion to the concessionaire. That is just one of the key components. It would have impacted, for example, on our ability to conclude the Fourth Mainland Bridge infrastructure because it will also fall within it. It impacted on waterway transportation as a competing infrastructure and all, so on and so forth. So it's not unusual for government, even in developed economies, to step in when it becomes imperative
in the public
terms
interest.
of public interest.
We'll be right back.
Government wants our city to become a mega modern city. And so, government is providing modern markets for us to carry out our business. Now, this requires money. So, we need to pay our taxes to help government to help us. I pay my taxes. I hope you've paid yours. I pay. Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council. My name is still Okweyemi Agbaje, and my guest is still Ayo Gbeleyi, Lagos State Commissioner for Finance, Chartered Accountant, former banker, infrastructure specialist. Ayo, thanks for that illuminating discussion on the rationale for the expressway buyover. Let's talk about the broad range of financing strategy in Lagos State. So we know you've been talking about bonds. We know there's a huge discussion around taxes in Lagos State. We know that you have this land emphasis on finance. What's your broad strategy? What are the elements of your financing strategy? And how do you put everything together? What are you trying to achieve?
We are seeing a rapidly urbanizing world. According to United Nations, up until now, maybe roughly just about a third to 40% of global population live in cities. Cities are beginning to play a very significant role in the development of nations. It is expected that over the next couple of decades, cities would have 66 to third of global population, inhabiting in cities. That's a very significant figure. And of course, cities are also synonymous with citizens' prosperity. As we urbanize and we also build out infrastructure, concomitantly, we improve the socio-economic well-being of the people. Lagos is not an exception. Lagos today contributes close to 30% of national gross domestic product. So putting that in perspective, it then means that, for you also to catch up with population growth, you must build out the required social amenities and infrastructure of people who come into the city. So that kind of provides an underlying basis for our strategy. And of course, between the government and the populace, you have a social contract. And the social contract is that you will contribute into the Commonwealth to enable us provide for you those services that you cannot provide on your own, which must be provided for as a collective. For example, you are not going to build your own road from Lekki, where you live, into Victoria Island or to Ibadan. You are not going to provide your own neighborhood security, even if you attempt to provide security within your defense of your house. You are not going to provide on a sustainable basis your own power, your own water, your own sewage, your own hospital. You can't, continue to train your kids from, elementary school up to university. So if we know that these are all the areas of infrastructure and social amenities that government must provide, then how has this been done, over the years or in countries? First and foremost, we look up to taxes, which is your own contribution into that Commonwealth. Next, we also look at PPP structures as well. You look at financing, maybe by way of debt, whether it is commercial bank debt, financing from multilateral agencies, etc., etc. Now, if you look at Lagos State, essentially, we focus on our internally generated revenue. And of course, we complement that with local bank borrowing on a medium-term basis and on a sustainable basis. We also look at multilateral financing from the like of World Bank. We are currently closing out the second tranche of the development policy operations, which gives us access to a total of $600 million US. We also issue bond programs. We look at bond programs. And PPP has become such a fantastic tool that we are now leveraging on. As we speak to you in this state, PPP projects combined have attracted, over $10 billion US of direct investment into our state. And we'll continue to build on that. And now to put it in perspective, all of this that I have said, our budget, in the last 3 years has been averaging about $500 billion. So last year was 507.1 billion. This year is 489.686 billion. You put that in US dollar terms, it's just barely 3 billion US, approximately, depending on the exchange rate you are applying, whether it's 160 to the dollar or 170 to the dollar. Now, if you also look at what we call our state development plan, which is running over a 13-year period from 2012 up to 2025, it envisages total investment in infrastructure in the region of about 50 billion US dollars, of which roads and drainages will take a huge chunk at about 20 billion US dollars. Power will take about 10 billion US dollars. Transportation, intermodal transportation, rail, buses, waterways will take about 9.3. And of course, ICT is about 5 billion US. Now, put that in perspective, and I said just about 3 billion US dollars of budget. Annually. Even if we then apply that, everything, forget that we will spend on recurrent expenditure to maintain those infrastructure. Even if we apply it, all of it, it will take us the next 17 years, thereabout, on a nominal basis to get to put in place 50 billion US dollars of infrastructure. The question then becomes, can infrastructure wait with exploding population? No, we must fast track and we must look for creative, sustainable and prudent ways of financing, supplementing the taxes that we generate.
Excellent. Excellent overview. Let me leave it at that. I'll go deeper into each of those elements in the next segments with Mr. Ayo Gbeleyi, Lagos State Commissioner for Finance. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council. Ayo Gbeleyi, you were talking about, you gave us a very good overview of the entire financial strategy. Let's focus on the bond issuance program, because I know a lot of viewers will be concerned about that. Tell us about it. The size, the structure, the mechanics, the performance, and some of your opponents accuse you, political opponents, of mortgaging the states. Somebody said 1 trillion naira. What do you have to say?
First, let me start by saying, as a very responsible government, what we ensure at all times in all we do in terms of policy and program is to institutionalize whatever we do as a state. In this regard, we have the debt management and debt issuance program law, respectively. The debt management office law itself was passed in 2009. The debt issuance program was passed in 2008. So we are not just acting on a knee-jerk basis or by hunch. So we institutionalize whatever we do. We put in a framework in place which has been commended by multilateral agencies like World Bank, etc., AFDB, to name just a few. And other states are actually coming to take a copy of our laws in Lagos State and just clone it for their own debt program. So in that regard, we ensure that we borrow on behalf of the state in a very prudent and sustainable manner. A state that has consistently, over about 6 rating parameters, from Augusto and Co., from Global Credit Rating Agency, from Fitch Rating, have been rated, in fact, between last year and now, we've moved up in 4 places out of the overall of 6 notches that we're talking about. The Lagos State rating on its own in 2013, as a sub-national, we were rated A+ by Augusto, A+ by GCR, Global Credit Rating, and then for Fitch Rating on the national long term, we were rated BB positive, and of course on the foreign currency long-term rating, we were rated BB minus stable, which is also just anchored.
The outlook is positive and stable.
Outlook is positive and stable. And then when you look at the bond program itself, the most recent bond was rated AA minus by both Augusto and GCR. So if you have such international rating agencies who are professionals giving their opinion on the debt sustainability level of a state, I imagine that all these flight-by-night economists must be doing some voodoo economists in terms of information they are trying to pass to the public. But the public cannot be taken for granted, and I think the public is much more discernible. If you look at our debt service to revenue ratio, for example, the national benchmark that the debt management office at the federal level has set is about 40%. As a state, we are running at 13%. And our internal benchmark is actually 20%. If you look at our total debt to GDP ratio, for example, whereas emerging market economies, according to World Bank, you are allowed to even go as high as 30%, we are just at about 2.98%. So for you to then say that, the state is running a debt level that is not sustainable, that is not factually and empirically correct, because by all international benchmark and parameters, we are running the economy of Lagos State in a very prudent and sustainable manner, and we will continue to strengthen on that in the years ahead. There's
something called a sinking fund for all these bonds.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes, for every bond that we issue, the most recent, our total bond portfolio today is about 275 billion. The first tranche was issued in 2009 for 50 billion, second tranche in 2010 for 57.5 billion, and then a more recent tranche in 2012 for 80 billion, and then finally 2013 November 87.5 billion naira. Total aggregate of 275 billion naira. The first tranche that was issued in 2009 is going to mature next year because it's 5-year tenor bond, and the entire 50 billion that is required to pay that amount is already there.
In the sinking fund?
Yes, it expires in February, just next month. And the entire amount of required to fund that is there. And the sinking fund is such that a part of our statutory allocation is deducted at source, at federal allocation committee level, and then a complementary amount is funded from IGR. The truth is that even our law, the debt issuance program law that I referred to earlier on, also put in a discipline that we must commit a minimum total of 15% of our IGR on an annual basis into that consolidated debt service account. So, like I said to you, we have institutionalized every process of our borrowing program. Excellent. And same for all other policies in this government.
Excellent. Illuminating insights from Ayo Gbeleyi. Let's take another time out. We'll be back with our final segment.
Who knows Abi better thing? Abi who no like better thing? All these fine things where they see so. Now money government they take do now. Abi, I think it's like, you know, I mean, excuse me, I dey pay my tax. I dey do a thing, I dey pay my tax. Say you don't pay your own tax. If you pay your tax, I pay oh.
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
It's the Policy Council. You're back to my final segment with Mr. Ayo Gbeleyi, a chartered accountant, my colleague in banking. We used to run across each other a lot. An infrastructure finance specialist in the telecom sector and later in government, and now Lagos State Commissioner for Finance. Maybe tomorrow, Lagos State, what do you want to do after this job?
Well, like every other person in life, you know, you must have aspirations.
Okay.
So you must get to the zenith of your profession or your career, whatever you've chosen for yourself.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about this popular notion. I know I've seen the figures for many states. Some are 98% dependent on federal allocation. Some are 90. What's the percentage for Lagos State?
Well, we just have barely a bit over 30% of our total revenue coming out of federal allocation. A significant part of, you know, close to 70% comes out of internally generated revenue.
Okay, so Lagos State is essentially able to survive in the event of zero.
We are the only state in the country, and arguably, including the federal government of Nigeria, where in case, you know, you actually have zero allocation, we can continue to fund our operations in a very, very sustainable manner.
Give me a quick insight into the 2014 budget.
Well, the 2014 budget is 489.689 billion naira. It has a capital to recurrent expenditure mix of 52 to 48%. The capital expenditure component in terms of absolute figure is actually 255 billion naira. And then the recurrent expenditure, which includes personnel cost and overhead, is about 234 billion naira. In terms of focus, it's focused on progressing all of our major infrastructure projects and initiatives, and then also completing projects that are close to completion. You look at projects like Adiyan Phase 2 Water Works, which is 70 million gallons a day. The last time such a massive water infrastructure was built, you know, in Lagos State was in 1991, when the first phase of the Adiyan Water Works was completed. So the second phase, which adds another 70 million gallons, is now progressing quite rapidly. You look at the Mile 12 to Ikorodu Road expansion from 4 lanes to 6 lanes with a dedicated BRT corridor. That is one of the key projects that we aim to complete this year. There is also the Lagos-Badagry Express Road, which we intend to expand quite rapidly in the course of this year. There is the Blue Line Rail project that is also being expanded in the course of this current year. We have maternal and child care centers, of which 6 are already in operation. If you were listening to the news, one of such was inaugurated yesterday in Amuwo-Odofin by His Excellency. So we have 4 additional to go. We reckon that we are going to finish those 4 this year, and that adds to 13 dedicated facilities in Lagos, you know, for mother and child care, care in the state. Of course, the older ones being Lagos Island Maternity, Lagos Mercy Hospital, as well as Ayo House. Ayo House, we are also rehabilitating and expanding, and that is also earmarked to be completed this year. Our renal and cardiac center in Bagada, which is Lasut asset, will also begin operations this year. You know, of course, schools are not left out. Roads, inner roads, in all the various, there is no local government area out of the total of 57, including the LCDA, that you will not see 1, 2, 3, 4 massive road infrastructure that is being built out by the state government at the moment. So that is, on a very broad note, the focus of the 2014 budget of Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola, SAN. And again, like I mentioned before, that budget is also our last, last full year budget of this administration. So we've rolled up our sleeves and we are working, you know, hitting the ground running from day one to ensure that, if not anything, we beat the performance of 85% that we recorded last year in this current year.
Fantastic, Ayo Gbeleyi. Thank you very much for coming on the Policy Council.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back. I'm sure you liked it. That was a very illuminating discussion. We have a very sound sense of how the Lagos State government is financing itself. And indeed, we are reassured that the strategy is sustainable and sensible. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.